Hello everyone and welcome to Red Gaming Tech. As always, my name is Amata and this time we're going to be having a little discussion about co-op in horror games. Now most of you probably know that this is kind of becoming more and more prevalent recently, and it kind of worries me because we've got Dead Space 3 coming out, which is supposedly going to have an emphasis on co-op. And then the next official Slender game is also going to have co-op in it as well. I'm not counting Sanitarium and Hospice because they are not actually by the same people who did the original Slender. They're just games inspired by the original Slender, you know, which is fine. That's all good. But the next official Slender is going to have co-op, and I want to talk about the idea of co-op in horror games and basically why I don't think it's a good one. Yeah, to start my little argument off, let's just take a look at a couple of really good horror games from recent times. The first one that comes to my mind is, of course, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which is probably one of the scariest games to come out in a long time, and before Slender came along was really the only true survival horror game that had come out in a very long time, as most AAA titles that proclaim to be horror were just a game that happened to have occasionally flickering lights or maybe some monsters and wasn't actually scary. I mean, maybe it made you jump occasionally, but that's not my definition of a horror game. Any game can startle, but to actually make you feel afraid is something much more difficult. Games I can think of that have just completely missed the point were Fear 3, to be honest, and the Fear series in general I think hasn't really gotten it, at least not completely. Fear 3 especially, from what I've played of it and seen of it, that it's just no. Also, Silent Hill Homecoming couldn't have missed the point any harder. You know, I could go on all day with horror games that have missed the point. I mean, I haven't actually played Dead Space or Dead Space 2, to be honest, but from what I've seen, it doesn't actually look much like a horror game. It looks closer than most of the other games that I've just mentioned, but still not quite what I personally would define as a horror game, which is something like Amnesia, Silent Hill 1, 2 or 3, Project Zero 1 and 2, which will be Fatal Frame over in the US, and obviously recently we've got Slender, Witch, Dark Ocean, The Corridor. Lots of indies are getting it right, and a big part of what makes them right is the sense of isolation. This is something that the Silent Hill series just did perfectly, at least in my opinion. Cast your mind back to, say, Silent Hill 1, 2 or 3, but let's go with 2. That's the one that most people know and have actually played, since it's the most one of the most popular Silent Hill games. You are on your own for most of the game, and even when there is someone else with you, they don't really help to make you feel less alone, because from their reactions, it's kind of like they're not seeing the same things you are. So you kind of get the impression that something's off, and their presence doesn't really help you feel comforted when you're shooting at monsters or what have you, and they're just reacting as if it's normal, or it's a normal situation. So yeah, the sense of isolation, and just how you're completely and utterly helpless in the face of something just gargantuan and evil that can't even be comprehended, is a big part of what makes that game and Amnesia so terrifying. There's no other living things apart from the monsters and the occasional human character, but as I said, the human characters in Silent Hill 2 especially aren't to be trusted, and you never see any at all in Amnesia as far as I'm aware, apart from if you want to count Alexander right at the end, but that's like the final boss fight and isn't really, you know, part of the game. He's just a disembodied voice in your memories more often than not. In Amnesia you are completely and utterly alone in this huge ass place, a castle basically, or it is a castle, and you have no defence at all against these monsters, and in that way Amnesia is scarier than Silent Hill, because at least in Silent Hill you have some weapons, even if it's usually just a rusty pipe or what have you, you know, it depends. But so you're alone, there's no one to turn to, no one to share your fear, no one to say, oh, you know, let's work together and find a way out. I mean, obviously when you even play these games, it makes you feel better if someone else is there, and you being alone in this room, usually with the lights off, adds to it, and that's because it's in the game as well. This character is alone, he has no one to turn to, and he might actually be quite mad and not actually be having this actually happen to him, when there's no one else to back you up and say, wow, that was a bit weird. You know? You would start to question your own mind after a while. Start to feel like maybe you're the one that's going insane. And I feel like these newer horror games that are going to have co-op are just going to lose that atmosphere completely, because it's not just about the sense of loneliness, but that is a big part of it. Why do you still feel so freaked out by that random noise behind you, or the picture that just fell off the wall, or what have you, if there's someone else there? You just wouldn't. You'd be like, oh, okay, moving on. Whereas if it's you, you'd be like, what the fuck was that? Oh my god, I better hide. Because there's no one here to protect me, I can't protect myself. So, take Slender for example. That too has the sense of loneliness perfect. Seriously, so perfect. Especially for a free game. That is a huge part of what makes it so scary. I said this in my original Slender video, that you're alone in these woods, you don't know why you're there, for what good reason you're collecting the pages, or who this person chasing you is, or it's not even really a person, so you can't really properly call it a man, it's just a creature. And, you know, it's pitch black, even with the torch you can't see anything. There's no one else around. So when you turn and see Slender Man behind you, you're terrified, because there's no one around to help you. You're completely alone in these mysterious woods, you don't even know where you are, or anything. So when the new Slender comes out, and it has co-op, I just feel like the huge scare factor that comes with that game, and it really is a terrifying game, one of the scariest games I've played, Amnesia included, of course. Excuse me. And if you've got someone there to share your fear, to comfort you, to maybe come up with a plan to one of you can distract Slender or what have you. You know, obviously that's not going to be part of the game, but I'm talking like, you know, when you play a horror game, especially a first-person horror game, such as Slender or Amnesia, you are put into the shoes of the protagonist. So I'm talking as if it's you, because that's the way you're going to be thinking and reacting when you play the game. So yeah, I just think that it's going to lose a lot of what makes it so scary if there's someone else to comfort you. It's as simple as that. I mean, it depends on how they do it. I mean, I'm not instantly panning the game before it's even come out. Of course not. I'm going to play it when they release it, whenever that might be, I don't know. But whenever they release it, of course, I'm going to play the hell out of it. I'm really curious to see how they do it, but it's just my concern that the co-op, having someone else there with you in these woods to keep you company, share your fear, share your feelings, you know, reassure you that there is another living being in this woods or wherever they end up setting it, other than Slender Man, is going to take away from it. And I've explained why in great detail. It's not just about the sense of loneliness, though. If you really analyse what makes Amnesia go so scary, part of it is loneliness, helplessness, and just your complete and utter submission, to be honest, because you can't defend or even try. In Silent Hill you can, yeah, but that game is still scary, and it really messes with your head as well, because you start to really question the character's sanity, even though there are other people there. So there are ways to do another person being there and it still be scary, yeah, undoubtedly. Because as I said, there is another NPC in Silent Hill 2 for brief sections of the game, but they just further emphasise the fear, because it's like they're not seeing the same things that you are. And maybe that's how it would be in Slender, I don't know, but if you're playing with an AI, maybe, yeah, they could do it that way. But if another human being is playing with you, I don't know, I just don't think it's going to be the same. I really, really don't. I mean, I hope they prove me wrong. I could just be worrying over nothing. But generally speaking, I don't think co-op in horror games is a good idea. I just don't. And I've gone into great detail explaining why. It's not just about sense of loneliness. You can have a horror game without that, but it's a huge part of what makes games like Amnesia, Silent Hill, and Project Zero even so scary. In Project Zero you have your sister with you pretty much most of the game, apart from rather long sections where she gets kidnapped and you have to go after her. I'm pretty sure that's fairly about a couple of hours in. No. Yeah, about an hour in. And from that point you're pretty much on your own, apart from brief points where you're with her or you see her or what have you. And that game does it right, because she, like I said, she's not with you for most of the game, and it kind of like gives you this comfort of like, oh, your sister's there, she's experiencing it with you, it's all fine. But then that's taken away. So it all depends on how you do it, and I'm very curious to see how the new Slender, official Slender, is going to do this whole co-op thing. I'm very curious indeed, because I'm just concerned that it's not going to be the same with another person there with you. Anyway guys, I hope you found this video somewhat entertaining. I know I rambled a little bit, but that's kind of the point of these videos, just to have a little discussion and all that good stuff. But I want to hear your opinions on everything that I've said, and just this topic in general. What do you think makes these games so scary? Do you think that the co-op is going to affect them, and if so, why? And if not, why not? You know, I want to hear your thoughts. You know my opinion. What's yours? I've always want to hear from you, so hit back with me in the comments and all that good stuff, and I'd love to hear from you. Anyway guys, as always, please do check out our channel and our website over at redgamingtech.com, and I'll see you again next time.